In 1901, a Greek sponge diver working a shipwreck off the tiny island of Antikythera pulled up a lump of corroded bronze that nobody on the recovery team paid much attention to. It sat in storage at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens for months before anyone noticed it had cracked open, revealing something that made no sense at all for an object recovered from a wreck dated to around the 1st century BC. Gear wheel, dozens of them, impossibly fine, interlocking with a precision that had no known equivalent anywhere else in the ancient world. For most of the 20th century, the object, now called the Antikythera Mechanism, sat in a strange limbo. Everyone agreed it was real, ancient, and genuinely baffling. Almost nobody could agree on what it actually was, or how a civilization without precision machining tools had built something this intricate. It would take over a century, 3 generations of researchers, and eventually X-ray and CT imaging technology that didn't exist when the object was found, to finally understand what a Greek engineer had built more than 2,000 years ago, and just how far ahead of its time it genuinely was. If real archaeological mysteries with real documented solutions are why you're here, subscribe and turn on notifications. We go looking for the next one every week. The wreck itself was found by sponge divers working near Antikythera, a small island between Crete and the Greek mainland, and initial excavations conducted with early diving equipment recovered bronze and marble statues, coins, and other cargo consistent with a Roman-era ship that had likely sunk sometime in the 1st century BC, possibly while transporting looted or purchased Greek treasures toward Rome. The corroded lump of bronze recovered alongside these objects looked, at first glance, unremarkable, until it split apart from the pressure of drying out, revealing the gear train inside. Early 20th century researchers, including the German philologist Albert Rehm, recognized that the fragments contained Greek inscriptions and clearly represented some kind of astronomical device, but the tools available at the time simply couldn't see deeply enough into the corroded fused bronze to reconstruct how it actually worked. It wasn't until the 1970s that the physicist and science historian Derek de Solla Price, using industrial gamma-ray imaging borrowed from the kind of equipment used to inspect metal welds, produced the first real internal maps of the mechanism's gear structure. Price identified at least 30 separate gears and proposed that the device was some kind of calendar computer capable of tracking astronomical cycle, a genuinely startling claim since nothing else from the ancient Mediterranean world came close to this level of mechanical complexity. The full picture didn't emerge until the 2000s, when a research consortium called the Antikythera Mechanism research project, combining classicists, astronomers, and engineers including Mike Edmonds and Tony Freeth, gained access to a specially built high-resolution CT scanner and advanced surface imaging technology capable of reading extremely faint, corroded inscriptions that were completely invisible to the naked eye. Published in a landmark 2006 paper in the journal Nature, their reconstruction revealed something considerably more sophisticated than even Price's already remarkable analysis had suggested. The device contained at least 30 surviving bronze gears, evidence of an original design that may have included over 37, and inscriptions identifying it explicitly as a device for tracking the motions of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 planets known to ancient Greek astronomy, along with a sophisticated eclipse prediction system based on the real, historically documented Saros cycle used by Babylonian and Greek astronomers to predict when eclipses were likely to occur. The engineering inside the mechanism is genuinely remarkable by any standard, ancient or modern. One particular gear train inside the device uses a clever pin-and-slot mechanism to reproduce the moon's variable orbital speed, the real astronomical fact that the moon moves faster through the sky when closer to Earth and slower when farther away, a phenomenon connected to elliptical orbital mechanics that wasn't properly explained in Western science until Johannes Kepler's work more than 1,500 years later. The Antikythera Mechanism's designer didn't need to understand elliptical orbits theoretically to model the moon's changing speed mechanically. They'd apparently observed the pattern precisely enough, likely drawing on centuries of accumulated Babylonian astronomical record-keeping to build a gear system that reproduced it physically, turning astronomical observation directly into working machinery. The device also included a section modeling what researchers believe was a display of the ancient Greek games calendar, including the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, alongside its astronomical functions, suggesting the object wasn't purely a scientific instrument used by astronomers in isolation, but plausibly something built for a wealthy patron who wanted a genuinely comprehensive, functioning model of time itself, the movements of the heavens, and the rhythm of Greek civic and athletic life, mechanically linked in a single hand-cranked device roughly the size of a small mantle clock. Inscriptions on the mechanism's surviving plates, painstakingly reconstructed through the imaging technology, function almost like an ancient instruction manual, describing what different dials and pointers represented and how the device's front and back faces displayed different information simultaneously. A front dial showing zodiacal and calendrical information, and back dials displaying the Saros eclipse cycle and a separate 76-year calippic cycle used for longer-term calendar correction. Researchers have identified linguistic and astronomical evidence connecting the mechanism's specific eclipse prediction methods to Babylonian astronomical traditions that had been transmitted into the Hellenistic Greek world, suggesting the device represents a genuine synthesis of centuries of Babylonian observational data combined with Greek mechanical engineering, rather than a purely isolated Greek invention. Where the device was actually made, and by whom, remains a subject of genuine ongoing research rather than settled fact. Some researchers have connected stylistic and inscriptional evidence to the island of Rhodes, a major center of Hellenistic mechanical and astronomical innovation associated with figures like the astronomer Hipparchus and the engineer Posidonius. The dating of the shipwreck itself, based on associated pottery, coins, and other cargo, places it in the early 1st century BC, though the mechanism itself may have been constructed somewhat earlier and simply been valuable cargo aboard the ship when it sank. What makes the mechanism genuinely startling isn't just its individual sophistication, it's the almost complete absence of anything comparable in the historical or archaeological record for the next 1,000 years or more. Nothing remotely similar in mechanical complexity reappears in the European or Mediterranean world until medieval astronomical clocks began emerging in the 14th century, well over a millennium later. This has led researchers, including Tony Freeth, to argue the mechanism likely wasn't a unique, one-off invention, but rather represents the survival of a single example from what may have been a broader tradition of Hellenistic geared astronomical devices, a tradition whose other examples simply didn't survive, most plausibly because bronze, unlike stone, was routinely melted down and reused throughout antiquity for its material value, meaning surviving examples of ancient precision bronze work are almost certainly a tiny, accidental fraction of what once existed. The Antikythera mechanism may not be evidence of an isolated genius working alone, so much as the sole surviving fragment of an entire lost engineering tradition, mostly melted down by later generations who had no way of knowing what they were destroying. In 2021, researchers at University College London, continuing collaboration with Tony Freeth and the wider research project, published a proposed complete digital reconstruction of the mechanism's front-face planetary display, using the surviving inscriptions and gear ratio to model how the device likely represented the 5 known planets' motion using an ingenious system of nested concentric dials. A reconstruction still debated and refined by other specialists, since portions of the original front face remain lost entirely, but one that demonstrates the mechanism's underlying mathematics work out consistently with known ancient Greek planetary theory when modeled completely. The mechanism sits today in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, still partially corroded, still missing roughly 2/3 of its original construction, having spent over 2,000 years first as a functioning machine, then as a cargo at the bottom of the Aegean Sea, then as an unremarkable lump of green bronze corone in a museum storeroom for the better part of a decade before anyone noticed what was inside it. It took gamma rays, then CT scanners, then international teams of physicists, classicists, and engineers working across more than a century to finally read what a single Greek craftsman had encoded into bronze gears over 2,000 years ago. Proof that the ancient world was, at least once, capable of building something that wouldn't be equaled again for more than 1,000 years, and that very nearly disappeared entirely before anyone understood what they were looking at.